If I could sit down with every 16-year-old in Canada and have a good sit down chat about money and creating wealth, I wouldn't start with stocks or bonds or RSPs or life insurance or TFSAs or some sort of online trading account. These are all great products and great ideas, but they don't represent enduring principles. During your teenage years, you discover your sovereignty, and accompanying your emotional sovereignty and the idea of who you really are as a person comes the idea of funding the life that you want. You go from almost having no financial life of your own to suddenly having a job or having a bank account. And without having decades of experience in the job world, you're expected to pick a career, something you're going to do for the rest of your life. And with that job comes a reward, something that you exchange for your mental or physical labor into being able to use that medium of exchange, money, into doing and having the things that you want. And through that whole process, you're going to make some assumptions. You're going to assume that you're going to make more money along the way and become wealthy. And after decades of being a certified financial planner, I can tell you that's just not always the case. In fact, assumptions are dangerous. Assumptions can lead you to making decisions without understanding the facts or consequences of those decisions. The world is changing, and the facts of your parents or grandparents, what they did to make a living, may be truths that may not even apply anymore. I've met a lot of people who have huge incomes who never seem to have a lot of money. And I've met a lot of people who have small incomes that always seem to have an abundance of money. The fact is, income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is what comes in, and wealth is created by what you don't consume. So imagine you're a 16 or 17-year-old person who just gets a summer job, maybe their first summer job. Maybe you're landscaping, working in a dish pit, or checking groceries in the grocery store. Then that first paycheck arrives, and it just feels different because you've earned it. And for possibly the first time in your life, you're making financial decisions. What should you do with your paycheck? And after the shock of taxes and payroll deductions, and realizing that the government is going to have a hand in your life no matter what you do for as long as you do it, the first paycheck usually goes to frivolous things like clothes or meals out or hanging out with your friends and buying a coffee. And money is supposed to be used. Don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that you should save every penny. But what happens to the parts of your income that you don't spend? What you do with the remaining amount after your expenses is possibly the biggest key to creating wealth or staying broke. And if you're halfway ambitious, you realize that the more mature you get, the more job and life skills you accumulate, that's going to translate into a higher and higher income as you go along in your career. And as your income grows, there's an entire financial system designed to suck out every nickel out of your wallet. So here's a few truths I'd love for you to understand before that day comes. Let's start with a credit card. A credit card is not money. It is access to borrowed money. If you have $600 in your bank account and a credit card with a zero balance and a $5,000 limit, you do not have $5,600. You have $600. And somebody has agreed to lend you another $5,000. This doesn't automatically make a credit card bad. It's just a useful financial tool. It's convenient. It creates a record of purchases. It may even have a bonus or rewards program associated with it. And properly managed, a credit card can help you establish and improve your credit score. But you need to understand what you're doing every time you tap that credit card. You're borrowing money. Suppose you spend $1,000 on your credit card this month, and then you get your statement. And somewhere on that statement, it's going to show the total amount owed as $1,000. And then you're going to see another number, and this number is your minimum payment. It's the amount that the credit card company wants you to pay in order to keep the credit in good standing. And maybe nobody has ever explained this to you, and you might assume that you only need to pay the $30. But paying the $30 isn't a good financial strategy because you still owe the $1,000. The lender isn't going to tell you that not paying the full balance isn't a good financial strategy. If you only make the $30 minimum payment, the $970 is still owing. it's borrowed money. The lender is happy that you're not paying off the full credit card. In fact, the more that you don't pay, the higher their income is. Why is that? Because interest is applied to the outstanding balance that you don't pay by the deadline date. So with a credit card, you can spend all you want up to your limit, and you accumulate these purchases that appear on the statement when you receive it. Then the statement will show you what the minimum payment is, what the total amount is, and what the due date of that payment would be. And if you pay that full balance off, and not just the minimum payment, but the full balance, then no interest is applied to you. You can literally spend, defer the payments, and then catch it all up and make the full payment to that credit card and avoid any interest being applied. If you carry a portion, even a small portion, of the balance left unpaid after the payment date, then interest is going to be applied to that amount. And the main problem with this is that the interest rates are borderline usurious. That is, that the interest rate is so high that it's almost illegal. Cash advances are even worse. They generally have no grace period at all on the interest, so the interest is charged immediately upon the cash advance date, and usually fees are also applied. But there's something that starts being created, something nefarious and psychologically interesting. Imagine you bought a pair of shoes about 6 months ago and you used your credit card to buy them. Maybe they're getting old. Maybe you don't really like them anymore. Maybe you've never worn them. But if that purchase is still sitting on the credit card as an unpaid balance, you continue to work today to pay for the things you bought yesterday. And that is consumer debt. Yesterday's spending gets a claim on tomorrow's income. And this is why I would encourage you to pay the full balance off every month. Don't think about the minimum payment as a repayment strategy. And wherever possible, think about your credit card as being a method of payment, not an extension of your capital. And then you're going to hear another number that is affected by the use of your credit card, and that is your credit score. In Canada, credit scores usually start at 300 and go all the way up to 900. Don't think of it as linear. A credit score of 400 is twice as good as 300. A credit score of 500 is twice as good as 400. The higher the number, the better the score. If you're borrowing money, lenders use this credit score as a determining factor on whether or not you are credit worthy, whether they will extend you any credit whatsoever, and the payment terms, and possibly even the rate applied. Instead of obsessing over your credit score, I want you to think about the behaviors that influence it. Pay your bills on time. Don't run your credit cards up to their limits. Don't constantly be applying for new credit cards or car loans. Be thoughtful when you apply for new credit. And consider the idea of credit utilization. If you have an available credit limit of $5,000 on your credit card and you're running it at about 90% of its limit, you're going to have your credit score suffer. It's recommended that you keep your credit usage at about 30% of the approved limits. Your payment history is also an important factor in determining your credit score. The later you are with your payments, the worse your credit score gets. But here's something I want you to remember. Your credit score is not your wealth score. You can have an almost perfect credit score and still own nothing. The credit score is an indication to tell lenders how you've handled borrowed money. And wealth is something else entirely. You may have worked during your high school or college years and now have decided that you've started your career. You want to get ahead. And the problem with that is your lifestyle has been waiting for you to get ahead too. The old things that you have and bought in the past just don't feel good anymore. You start looking at expanding your lifestyle. Maybe it's new clothes, new car, or a new apartment. And when you're looking to increase your lifestyle, another dangerous pattern starts emerging. You no longer look at the sticker price, say a new car for $55,000. You start looking at the payment. This car is $347 every 2 weeks. So instead of thinking about whether they can afford the car or not, they start thinking about whether they can afford the payment. And certainly these are different questions to ask altogether. And these days, everything seems to have a payment. Your iPhone has a payment. Your gym has a payment. Your streaming service has a payment. Your apps have a payment. Uber Eats has a payment. Then layering on all these payments, something else comes along. buy now and pay later. 4 easy payments. You can make payments on your grocery bill. You can make payments on your Costco bill. Sooner or later, people are getting tied up in a Costco hot dog payment. And none of these things individually are financially catastrophic, and this is how the marketing works. You start getting sold on small conveniences and don't start realizing how this all starts stacking against you. The proper mindset is not to think that these monthly subscriptions are a cost to you. In fact, if you flip the script and really think about what these monthly subscriptions are, they're not a cost to you at all. They are an income stream for corporations. You don't wake up one morning and decide to spend your entire paycheck. You commit a few dollars here and a few dollars there, and then you wake up and wonder where all the money went in your bank account. Northcote Parkinson captured this principle exceptionally beautifully in his book Parkinson's Law. His second law became known as expenditure rises to meet income. In other words, a luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity. And you can see this happen all the time. Somebody making $40,000 is itching to get a $10,000 raise just to make ends meet. They think that only if they made more money, they'd have more breathing space in their budget. And at $50,000, they're yearning for $60,000. And their lifestyle continues to expand to meet the income that they want. Bigger house, a nicer car, more subscriptions. This is called lifestyle inflation. And I'm not suggesting, as I did before, that you should live like a pauper. You should enjoy your life. But there's no prize for having the nicest TV, the biggest car, or the nicest investment portfolio when you're all lying in a cemetery. The problem begins when every increase in income correlates to an increase in consumption. Barbara Ehrenreich explored this in her book, Nickeled and Dimed. The book is a useful reminder that sometimes financial difficulty isn't caused by reckless consumption. Sometimes your income is not enough for these tiny expenses that keep recurring day after day. If nearly everything you make is going to food, housing, and clothing, canceling your Netflix subscription isn't going to make you wealthy. You may have an income problem. And when you're young, one of the most valuable assets you have is the ability to make an income. So you should learn something valuable, finish your education, complete an apprenticeship, get an education where the economics make sense. Learn how to sell, learn how to communicate, become exceptionally good at solving problems that people are willing to pay you to solve them, because you can only reduce your expenses so far. Your earning capacity has to have room to grow. And once it does start to grow, don't give away all the increase. This is where wealth building starts. With discipline. Any increase to your income should be deferred instead of spending it on frivolous or silly or temporary things. At first, maybe you start building an emergency savings account. And when your car breaks down, that $800 repair bill doesn't become chaos, it becomes manageable. And perhaps after establishing an emergency fund, you can start tackling your debt. Less of your future income now belongs to your past spending, but you also need to protect the machine that's creating the money in the first place. And until your investment income exceeds your job income, then you are that money machine. In your early 20s, your investment account may be tiny, but you have decades of earning potential ahead of you. So what happens financially if something prevents you from being able to create that income? One of the first things that we recommend on the insurance side is disability insurance. People are insuring their car, their iPhone, but the asset that's paying for everything is getting up in the morning and not insured. So what would happen if you couldn't get up in the morning and earn an income? Disability insurance is designed to replace your income up to certain percentages if an injury or illness prevents you from being able to. Your greatest financial risk in your early 20s is not that the stock market crashes, it's that you have an inability to work. Then there's life insurance. In your early 20s, again, you're probably not concerned about having a family depend on you. Having a large life insurance policy is probably not your financial priority. But then life changes. You have a partner, you buy a house and have a mortgage, maybe you start having a family. Other people become financially dependent on you. And the question to ask with life insurance is, what would happen to the people who do depend on me financially if I were gone tomorrow? Life insurance is designed in order to provide money when the person who people are relying on is no longer there. In Canada, the death benefit of a life insurance policy is generally tax-free and paid to the beneficiary that you name on the policy. The policy can be used to replace income, to provide for financial dependence, or to pay off a mortgage. And then there's critical illness insurance. What happens if you get a serious illness and don't pass away? The diagnosis of a serious illness can still create financial needs and a financial shock. Time away from work, a spouse taking time off to care for you, childcare, travel, maybe even making changes to your home to provide you with more mobility and access. Expenses you never planned for. Critical illness generally provides a tax-free lump sum benefit. The money can then provide you with some financial flexibility while you're recovering from the illness. So think about these three risks. Life insurance satisfies the needs if you're no longer there. Critical illness insurance satisfies the needs if you are still there. And disability insurance satisfies the needs if you cannot produce an income. You won't necessarily need to enact each of these three benefits at any one time or at any one stage in your life. But this is a foundation of financial planning. You need to assess the risks and then assess whether you want to carry the burden of those risks on your own or transfer them in exchange for a monthly premium or annual premium. We often see that the number one risk to a financial plan is the risk not addressed. There's very little point in creating wealth over 20 years if a serious illness is going to blow it all apart. Once you've got a savings plan established, maybe you have an insurance policy or two in place, and you've paid down your debts, now we can move into investing. That is the idea that you convert some of those extra income that you are not spending and turn it into assets. For many young Canadians, a TFSA may be the most opportune place to place some of these savings, but the point isn't that it's a TFSA. The most important thing is how the money got there in the first place. You created a surplus, which was a monthly amount or an annual amount over the amount that you spent. Essentially, you produced more than you consumed. And instead of using every dollar to buy something that's disappeared, you are able to start creating something. That is, assets that you can grow, control, and protect. At the beginning, to be honest, it's not going to look very impressive. You may have less than $1,000 to start, but over time it builds. And for quite a while, the amount that you're contributing matters a lot more than the amount that you're earning. But something important is changing. At the beginning of your working life, you are producing everything that you earn. That is, all the economic power is coming from your ability to perform that job or that task. But eventually you start building your capital that earns an income of its own. Some of the heavy lifting in your income can now come from money. And that's the power of compounding, where the money that you're making is making money, and the money that you're making is making its own money. So you don't need to look wealthy at age 25, you just need to look disciplined. Don't allow consumption to absorb every dollar that you make. Use credit without allowing credit to use you. Protect yourself against the risks that could seriously derail everything that you're building. Then systematically accumulate assets. And overall, give the whole process time. Because ultimately, the real power and the real value in creating wealth isn't the things that you're able to buy, it's the options of buying the things that you're able to buy. And you quickly start learning about the golden rules. That is, he who has the gold makes the rules. A financial emergency happens and you don't panic. The job becomes unbearable and you're not trapped. An opportunity comes across your path and you have the capital to take advantage of it. Somebody you love needs help and you're there to provide it. And it doesn't begin with finding the perfect investment. It begins with finding your discipline. Making money is only the beginning, but you have to learn not to give it away companies who see you as a revenue stream. You have to learn how to grow, control, and protect as much of what you earn as you can. The more you manage and are disciplined around your expenses, the more choices you'll have later. Time preference is a learned skill. The idea that to save $1 today in order to have $2 in your pocket tomorrow and give it enough time to create something bigger. If you found this video to be helpful in your journey of discovery for history, politics, philosophy, financial literacy, and economics, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for upcoming videos.